close contact with.
Immediate family that I haven't gotten to see, and close friends within my own neighborhood.
A big step on the path to getting back to normal. Ontario is allowing people to take part in larger gatherings, and hugging is okay again. The province updating its public health advice today, saying it is now okay for you to have close contact with up to 10 close friends or family members, and you can do so without physical distancing. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the details.
Social bubbles is the term most people use. The idea? You don't have to limit close contact to just the people in your household, but you can bubble up with another household or two. In Ontario, the government has decided to call it social circles.
Think of your social circle as the people you can touch, hug, and come into close contact with as we continue our shared fight against COVID-19.
Effective immediately across the province, it's considered okay to have close contact with people outside your household, but no more than 10, and it should only include those you're closest to.
This means finally hugging a grandparent or sharing a meal with your parents or closest friends.
Say you're a family of 4. You could form your social circle by adding one set of grandparents and your sister's family of 4. Or maybe you're a couple with a baby. Your parents and your partner's parents could join your circle, plus a few close friends. But people in one circle should not be in close contact with people from another.
It will be impossible for 10 people to only each have that circle. This is an explosion of bubbles. We won't be able to do it.
Still, people are eager at the prospect of expanding social contact.
I think that's good. I think as long as people are safe about it and kind of are particular with the 10 people they choose.
Try not to confuse the 10-person social circle with the province's new 10-person limit on social gatherings.
Social gatherings are friends, family. They don't necessarily need to be part of your social circle, but you do need to continue to maintain physical distancing. So you can see them, you just have to be spaced 2 meters apart.
And if you get it wrong, the Premier says, don't worry.
The social circle police aren't going to be knocking on your door.
This all comes as the spread of COVID-19 appears to be slowing across Ontario. The number of new cases reported today is the lowest it's been since late March, and that key number has been trending steadily downward for 9 straight days. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
And as the downward trend in new cases continues, parts of Ontario are entering the next stage of reopening. Most areas outside the GTA and Hamilton have lifted some restrictions on businesses, including restaurants, malls, and hair salons. But as Philippe Lishonek reports, there is concern visitors from COVID hotspots like the GTHA will overwhelm the smaller, more open communities.
Absolutely thrilled. It's to me, I felt like it was Christmas Day.
After months of no curls, cuts, or colors, this salon owner in Barrie is back doing what he loves. But for now, only for locals.
An incredible amount of new clients wanting to come in and book appointments, and a lot of them, as you see them coming up on the call display, you know, your 416 numbers coming up. As much as we welcome new clients, but right now we're servicing just our existing ones.
And it's not just this salon. The whole town is asking people, particularly from the GTA, not to make the hours drive north to get a haircut or sip a beer on a patio.
We don't want to be an unwelcoming community, but now's just not the time. I mean, we're in the midst of the first few days of reopening. Everybody's going to get a chance to do all of those sorts of things. I think if we're continue to be successful in Ontario, it's just a few more weeks.
The GTA stay away message that right now visitors from here are not welcome is understandable, given that 2/3 of all new cases are being reported here.
Oh my God, I died for a haircut right now. Yeah, but no, I try to respect, people's decisions.
Based off of the way that the States has been and kind of things have been opening up over there and their cases have kind of been rising, I do understand the reasons for concern.
If people are not spending money, how is the community going to benefit?
Back in Barrie, parking downtown and in the beach area is reserved for local residents only to discourage visitors. In nearby Innisfil, the mayor has received some nasty email in reaction to the town's decision to require people using public amenities to prove that they are residents.
I'm getting people from outside the municipality who feel that they're being discriminated against but I'm also getting local residents who feel that we're not doing enough to keep non-residents out of their spaces.
But when the province gives the all clear, she says business from out-of-towners will be needed to help rebuild the local economy. Philip Lishanok, CBC News, Toronto.
Today's loosening of pandemic restrictions comes as the province continues to see a declining number of COVID-19 cases. Ontario reported 182 additional cases of the disease today. That's the lowest number of new daily cases since late March. Provincial labs processed just over 28,000 tests for the virus yesterday, the most testing it has done in a 24-hour period. There have been a total of just over 31,000 cases of COVID-19 in Ontario since the pandemic began. The CEO of a GTA long-term care home that has been under scrutiny for its handling of the COVID-19 outbreak has stepped down. It comes as families with loved ones in 2 other GTA homes held rallies outside those facilities today. Lorenda Redekop has more.
Families protested, calling on the government to step in at Guildwood Extendicare, which is still in an outbreak. A heartbreaking reminder of just how hard COVID-19 has hit. Michelle Wilson lost her father.
He was severely dehydrated. His last words were water to me, which I had to find a nurse because they're so short-staffed. The nurses are also getting sick because there's not proper PPE equipment.
They are still having, as of last week, people that are becoming positive that have been negative all along. So their infection control is not working. We shouldn't be having anybody become positive this late in the game. So they need help.
The NDP has called for all homes run by Sienna Senior Living to be taken over by the province. And today, that company's CEO, Lois Cormack, resigned, citing personal reasons. Almost 300 people in Sienna homes in Ontario have died of COVID-19. Earlier this week, we brought you the story of a family whose father died at this Sienna home. Pietro Brucoleri died May 31st, not from the coronavirus, but exhaustion caused by lack of nourishment. He was found in a hot room like a sauna.
Very heartbreaking, devastated, disgusted.
In these homes, senior leadership has failed the residents completely, and a new leadership as well as systematic change from government is really needed to fix all the problems. We know in many cases the enforcement of regulations has been suspect, and we have to make sure there are enough inspectors making calls that are unannounced.
Today, the Prime Minister announced the military will stay on an extra 2 weeks at 6 of the hardest hit homes. One is Orchard Villa, a home now being run by the province. There, another protest and call for action. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario childcare centres can reopen today, but there is already a backlash. Workers rallied online and outside the Premier's office this morning, protesting how the reopening is being handled.
We thought that was such an irresponsible position to take, given that they've given us no notice, no funding, no information about what we need to do. So most of our daycare centers said that it was not safe to open. So that's why we came today and we said we're not opening today and we're not going to open until it's safe.
The group says that without funding, some childcare centres won't reopen at all. Mayor John Tory called on the province and feds to provide extra support to help more centres open in a safe manner. The province told CBC that it will help out with funding to get the centres open, and daycares will not be allowed to charge parents more. But the Ontario Coalition for Better Childcare says they did not get that information. Airline temperature checks are about to become mandatory for travelers coming to Canada and those flying within the country. The measure comes into effect at the end of June for those coming from outside. Inside the country, the screening will start at the end of July. Air Canada and WestJet have already adopted the practice. Medical experts say an elevated temperature does not accurately gauge whether a traveler has COVID-19. But Transport Minister Marc Garneau says it can detect fever linked to the disease and other illnesses, adding those are the people who shouldn't be flying anyway. Passengers turned away will be told to rebook their travel for 14 days after. Big closure taking place on Highway 400 this weekend and next. As part of the Metrolinx Finch West LRT project, sections of Highway 400 at Finch Avenue West will be closed. The closure will allow crews to replace the highway bridge in separate stages. It will start at 10 o'clock tonight and run until Monday morning. It will last for 2 weekends. The lanes will be closed in alternating directions, starting with the southbound section this weekend. And the outdoor portion of St. Lawrence Market will open tomorrow as the city begins to bring back farmers markets.
While these farmers markets will be different this year, they're an important part of ensuring food security in our city, and I am proud that we are responding quickly to ensure that they reopen soon.
The city says organizers have worked with Toronto's Curb TO program to relocate the outdoor area onto Market Street between the Esplanade and Wilton to allow for physical distancing. Toronto is working to reopen 22 other markets on city sites soon after. If you plan to pick up fresh local produce, the city is asking that market goers wear masks. And it is nice to have our farmers markets back. We have one across the street at David Pico Square, and hopefully that one will come back too, Colin.
Yeah, it is nice. It's also nice to have this kind of weather, Dwight. It's like the kind of weather, you know, it's a little cool, but it's still nice. You might wear a suit to stay warm, but then you want sandals on your feet kind of thing because it's just, do you know what I'm talking about,
Yes.
Dwight?
Yes, I do. I didn't wear the open toe today, though.
I'm giving Dwight a hard time, and I know some of our viewers are aware. You did a wonderful interview yesterday, always looking so sharp in your suit. But the camera might have caught.
Yes, they were calling me out on Twitter for wearing sandals during that interview.
Hey, and I'm giving you a hard time, but hey, folks at home.
It was hot.
I know. And am I wearing a really nice, sexy pair of heels right now? Or am I wearing a pair of old
comfortable
shoes
running
that
shoes.
I walk the dog in the winter?
We won't pan down. We won't pan down. Don't worry.
It's a mystery. It's a mystery. What's not a mystery? The weather, that I can tell you what that's going to be. Yes, dry conditions, perfect sandals weather, whatever it is you want to have on your feet these days. Good looking weekend with some sunshine. There'll be some cloud tomorrow towards the morning hours. That's all fine. But we'll see temperatures coming back, getting to seasonal by Monday, but above seasonal by the time we get to midweek next week. So if you're finding it just a little bit too cool, hey, I know it's comfortable, but if it's a little too cool, that's coming towards us. There's the breeze right now out of the northwest. That's been a little bit chilly as well at times, and couple that with the temperatures that are just in the teens, 17 in Toronto, 14 right now in Kitchener, and Markham coming in there at 15 as well. But like I say, we're into this weather pattern that's going to stick around for a few days. Now, there's a little disturbance to the north of us, a bit of cloud cover coming into cottage country and down towards the GTA, and we may hold a bit of that tomorrow early in the day, and that's just about it. And then we really are into such a nice weekend ahead of us. So it does get a bit chilly through the overnight hours. Temperatures there are below seasonal as well. So 9 will be the overnight low. By the way, the sun sets at about 9 o'clock tonight, and then tomorrow we're headed to a high, Dwight, of 18 degrees. You're going to forgive me, right, Dwight?
Of course.
Okay.
I pick on you all the time.
18 degrees, a nice Saturday on our hands.
Yes, it is. I'm going to go for a run tomorrow. Thank you, Colette.
You got it.
Weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a train.
Peel police are investigating a fatal shooting in Mississauga. They were called to the scene in the Dundas and Dixie area around 8 this morning. That's where a man was found dead inside a vehicle parked in a hotel lot. Kelly Ewan has more.
Officers were called to the Monte Carlo Inn at around 8 o'clock this morning. There, they found a man with multiple gunshot wounds lying in the driver's seat of a white BMW parked outside. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Shauna Petit said at first she thought the sounds were from a car backfiring or someone playing with firecrackers.
We hear a lot of backfiring, so I'm not sure, but then to come to find out that this happened, then it, you know.
But she says she isn't surprised.
I live in the hotel next door to this and have seen so much violence in just the last 3 months.
The victim's identity has not been confirmed by police, but around noon, a woman showed up distraught. I was with the woman when she approached officers. She said she hadn't heard from her brother all morning and believed that it was his vehicle. An officer then pulled her aside. She gave her brother's name and the vehicle information. The officer then told her that the victim is possibly her brother. As for suspects, police say a person was arrested at the scene shortly after they arrived.
They have not been charged at this time.
investigators are still trying to determine what, if any, part that person played in this incident.
Peel police have been speaking to occupants of the hotel and nearby business owners all day, while forensic investigators continue to comb the area for evidence. Kelly Yoon, CBC News, Mississauga.
Around the same time this morning, emergency crews in Peel discovered a man's body inside a burning car. The fire was reported at around 8:15. The SUV was parked in the driveway of a home near Mavis and Burnham Thorpe. Investigators don't believe the fire is connected to the fatal shooting. An open container of gasoline could be seen just steps from the vehicle. So far, no information on the victim has been released. A Toronto police officer has been arrested and charged in a crackdown on human trafficking. 49-year-old Constable Peter Roberts was arrested as part of Project 1/6, named after the victim's age. Alicia San has the story.
Toronto police investigators found one of their own as an alleged perpetrator during a 5-month investigation into the sexual exploitation of a 16-year-old girl.
They certainly are offended by the notion of one of their own members being involved in any type of crime. Certainly as the cases become more heinous when you're talking about the sexual exploitation of children, that's obviously even more concerning and upsetting.
Project 1/6 is a police probe into the sex trafficking ring surrounding a 16-year-old victim from East York. The first few months involved tracking and taking down her pimp. By March, investigators were zeroing in on the clients. 9 men were arrested, including 49-year-old Constable Peter Roberts.
He has 11 years of service with the Toronto Police. He's currently assigned to 51 Division and he's suspended with pay.
I was shocked and horrified.
The Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking works closely with police across the country.
We place such a high level of trust into our police service and police officers. And this officer was charged with one of the most heinous acts, that is sexual abuse of a minor.
With so many barriers preventing sex trafficking victims to come forward, especially minors, the trust of the police working to free them has to be solid.
I think something like this will, erode confidence in police, but the team that we've worked with at Toronto Police have been really fabulous, and I'm confident that they will handle this case and any other trafficking case with a minor going forward with the sensitivity that they need.
Constable Peter Roberts has a court date on June 24th, and Project 1/6 presses on. There may be more arrests as police work to unravel yet another human trafficking ring in the city. Alicia Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, the Greater Toronto Hockey League comes clean after refusing to make it public before. They're now releasing details about incidents of, quote, racial language on the ice. But first, this video of an Alberta First Nations chief being arrested has sparked outrage around the country. What the RCMP said about it before and what they're saying about it now, coming up next. New details have emerged about an incident in March involving RCMP officers and a First Nations chief in Alberta. Dashcam video shows an officer tackling Alan Adam to the ground, punching him and putting him in a chokehold. This comes amid heightened debate around racism and excessive use of force by police officers. And a quick warning, viewers may find some parts of the video disturbing. Carolyn Dunn with the story.
7 minutes into a confrontation with police, this. Athabasca Chippewan Chief Alan Adam was tackled, punched, and put in a chokehold. It happened in March, but the tape is just being released by the legal team of Chief Adam now.
There is important answers to have on these specific things, but also on the pattern that we are seeing of why so many Indigenous Canadians or racialized Canadians are afraid when they are interacting with the police. These are things that we need to address, and we're working on it together.
At one point, Adam removes his jacket and appears to take on a fighting stance. His defense lawyer is seeking to use the video to have charges against Adam stayed. The RCMP has charged Adam with 1 count each of resisting arrest and assaulting a peace officer. He's to appear in court in July. A group of lawyers in Alberta is calling for the resignation of Deputy Commissioner Zablocki, senior officers who reviewed the tape, and officers involved in beating Chief Adam.
Someone in a position of leadership to deny that systemic discrimination exists in Canada when our Supreme Court has recognized it since the 90s, it's absurd. And if you're in a leadership role like that and you can't recognize that, then perhaps it's time to go.
The RCMP initially said that force was justified to arrest Chief Adam and didn't require an outside investigation. The video was released just days after the commander of the RCMP in Alberta denied systemic racism in Canadian policing. And today, he said this.
It was never my intention to minimize anyone's experience or to hurt, racialize, or Indigenous people through my comments. I have personally learned much this week, and I'm completely committed to ensuring that I and the employees of the RCMP in Alberta continue the necessary work here in the province to eliminate systemic racism.
Alberta's Serious Incident Response Team is now investigating the use of force in the arrest of Chief Adam Allen. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
It is the largest youth hockey league in the country. Today, the GTHL made a major change as it tries to address racism on the ice. Details coming up next. Racism in hockey was put in the spotlight this past season when black players came forward to share their stories. Now, the Greater Toronto Hockey League is providing a snapshot of racism, homophobia, and misogyny in their minor hockey system. Jamie Strachan has been looking into this for us and joins us now. So, Jamie, tell us about the data they released today.
Well, Dwight, it wasn't a wide set of data. We're not talking about going back, 10 or 15 years. It's a snapshot. The last 3 years, the 2017 season through last season. And it gives a sense of how many gross misconducts the league gave out during the course of those 3 seasons. And it's divided into a number of different categories. You have, racial incidents, homophobic incidents, misogynistic incidents. And there were 197 of those penalties assessed over the last 3 seasons, 20 of them involving racial incidents. The bulk of them, Dwight, more than 170 involving misogynistic language. And that, the league says, is because kind of how they changed the way that they penalize that. But that is something that clearly the league has to wrestle with. Now, this is just what referees, Dwight, heard on the ice. This isn't stuff that happened, away out of earshot, off the ice between parents and spectators and other coaches and things like that. This is just things that were captured on the game sheet, heard by referees. And I spoke to the executive director of the GTHL today, Scott Oakman, and he acknowledged that this is likely the tip of the iceberg.
Penalties aren't the only reflection. It doesn't really give us a clear indication of how wide the problem is. And hearing now that parents are coming forward with examples and stories that they haven't talked about because they were concerned about the ramifications on their child, it's an indication to us that we need to create an opportunity for them to come forward with reporting, knowing that it's safe for their kids to do so and them to do so, and that there's going to be action based on the information that they provide to us.
Now, Dwight, all of these gross misconduct penalties carry an indefinite suspension that leads to a hearing. The average number of games that players received because of this misconduct, between 5 and 8 games on average.
Well, Jamie, it was just a couple of weeks ago that the GTHL said they wouldn't release this data. Why the change now?
Well, as Oakman told me today, the climate today and what's happening around the world changed the league's thinking. They acknowledge that they have to be far more transparent with what's happening on the ice. They were under a lot of pressure internally from former high-profile players who played in the GTHL, who went on to play professional hockey. They were hearing from a lot of parents who had gone through things and players who had gone through things in the league that they hadn't heard of before. And they were pushing the league to give kind of a more fulsome, transparent account of what actually what was happening, what the league had recorded. And that's why the league finally decided today to provide a snapshot, not a complete picture of what's happened over time, but 3 years worth of data.
All right, they say they are now committed to dealing with discrimination. Besides revealing this data, what else are they planning to do?
A couple of things, Dwight. One, the league is going to be holding a virtual town hall in the coming month or so. That's going to be a chance for parents and players and stakeholders in the league to come together, a comfortable forum, hopefully to tell stories about what's happened in the league. But more importantly, they're forming an independent commission that's going to be made up of people involved in the league, former players, people who have a perspective on this. And most importantly, Dwight, they're going to be looking at how can they make it easier for people to report things in a comfortable way that they don't feel there's going to be recriminations for their child on the ice if it wasn't heard by a referee, if it wasn't formalized on the game sheet. How can they do this? They're going to review the penalties around some of this misconduct, and they're going to review how they reveal the information going forward. And if this committee, which is not at all going to be tied or beholden to the league, says, you know what, go back and release more of the data, the league will do that. That commission, the heads of that commission, Dwight, going to be revealed in the coming days. Will be interesting, from my perspective, to see exactly who is on that committee, because, as we know these days, lots of groups putting out statements and making claims about what they're going to do, but actions will speak louder than words when it comes to the GTHL and how they handle misconduct going forward.
Yeah, they need a way for parents and players to get this information to them without suffering penalties. Thank you for this, Jamie.
Thanks, Dwight, for having me. I appreciate it.
Toronto police are investigating what they are calling a possible hate crime after nooses were found at a construction site at Michael Gorin Hospital. Police were called after two black construction workers found a couple of nooses at the site on Coxwell and Danforth on Wednesday. They told police that the nooses were not there when they left work Tuesday afternoon. The site is secured by an entry code and is monitored by 24-hour surveillance video. The construction company, Ellis Don, said in a statement it has no tolerance for racist actions. The company has launched its own internal investigation alongside police. Places of worship are allowed to reopen in Ontario today. In Toronto, the city's Catholic churches will begin a phased approach starting this weekend. Cardinal Thomas Collins explained what that plan will look like.
Beginning Sunday, June the 14th, the great feast of Corpus Christi, and continuing until Tuesday, June the 16th, the churches may open their doors for private prayer and for adoration only. There will be no public masses during this period. Secondly, beginning Wednesday, June the 17th, and continuing through Saturday, June the 20th, churches may begin offering daily public mass again. And finally, on the weekend of June the 20th and 21st, the parishes may once again offer Sunday Mass.
Collins is asking parishioners to take their temperature before going to church and follow physical distancing rules. Churches will be operating at 30% capacity. With most summer camps, sports, and other activities canceled, parents have to think outside the box to keep their kids busy and active. Angelina King has more on how parents are getting creative and some tips to keep your kids entertained this summer.
For Nate and Owen Zerkoff, summertime means camp and lots of sports, but not this year.
Well, it's pretty sad because usually I would be in hockey. I wanted to play more sports this year, especially baseball, and we can't do that because of the coronavirus.
The kids miss out on developing their skills that they would have been at camp or doing other activities.
You want to show them some hockey?
Enter Noah Reichen, a neighborhood teen they hired to fill that void. He was supposed to be a camp counselor this summer, instead bringing all those activities to the backyard.
I was just sitting home all day doing nothing on my computer, and I decided that going outside and exercising and being with the kids would be good for both the parents and for me.
They're literally bouncing off the walls. And it gives us a break too.
My wife and I were looking for an opportunity, a way to keep these munchkins occupied.
So he turned a steel livestock tank cattle typically drink out of into a 1,000-gallon pool.
So it helps to have the kids kept a little bit busy in a safe, secure way in the backyard.
And if you don't have a yard, nonprofit Parents Unite hosts a monthly virtual family fun day. Every half hour, there's a new activity live streamed, from Lego and karate
1, 2
to reading and exercise.
You high five your daddy or your mommy.
Mental health is so important right now, and just keeping people connected. You know, it's so important. A lot of our businesses are hurting because of the pandemic, so why not give them an opportunity to advertise what they're doing?
And when you've run out of ideas and the kids are back on their screens, one parenting expert has some important advice. It's okay.
Managing those expectations, but also making sure that they don't overwhelm themselves trying to create and organize and keep their children constantly occupied.
She says don't put pressure on yourself to recreate previous summers, because this year it's going to be different. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
And we have some good outdoor activity weather right now, Colin.
Yeah, we really do. It's so comfortable, you know, because we have less humidity. It means even if you are active out there, you're not sweating as much. And then when you do sweat a little bit, the wind kind of wicks it away from you. So it is more comfortable. And that's the positive note here, although temperatures are a bit below seasonal. So our temperature right now is 17 degrees, and our high for the day was 17. Around 3 o'clock, we were up to about 17.4. But I have to tell you that even the hot spot for the entire province was just under 23 degrees, and that was at Harrow, very close to Windsor. So real departure from, we've been the hot spot of the several days there, right? Well, for the hot spot for Canada, and today that goes to Saskatchewan. They've got temperatures there in the low 30s. Our current winds look like this. So this is that breeze that's coming from the north to northwest. At times the winds are a little bit gusty and it certainly feel a little cool. Now tomorrow we have kind of more of a northerly component, but not much of a difference. They will lighten up a little bit, however, and the pattern that we're really going into, there's sort of some blocking going on in the atmosphere, and because of that, it just means that we get into a pattern and we're going to stick there. If this is going to happen, it's really nice when it stays that way because it's a nice pattern and not because you get a low that kind of stalls out over top of you and gives you rain every day. So we're seeing the opposite of that. Now there's a little disturbance to the north, bringing a little bit of cloud cover, some isolated showers to the north of us. A little bit of cloud cover will come in as we go through the overnight and towards tomorrow morning, and then we'll see that moving away. It should be clearing away from eastern Ontario, eventually in southwestern Ontario too. So then we get into that full sunshine, and then we have that sun into Sunday as well. Very little to see here. It's one of those situations, and that is a good thing. Tonight's lows are on the cool side, single digits with the exception of St. Catharines at 10, and then tomorrow about 5 degrees below seasonal for our daytime highs, but we start to pick it up a couple of degrees we're going to grab on Sunday, Monday back to seasonal, and then the heat comes back by mid next week. Dwight.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
An update now on the backyard pool that got Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca in hot water last year. Del Duca built his pool despite not having any of the required permits from the city of Vaughan where he lives. Now, the city found out and shut down the build. It also determined the pool was built too close to public parkland behind Del Duca's home. Well, last night, the city's Committee of Adjustment voted to issue the required permits and allowed the pool to continue to sit just 1 meter from public land instead of the required 7 meters. The committee was presented with letters of support for the pool from several neighbors. Del Duca blamed the lack of permits on a mix-up involving the pool builder. Still ahead, our final Frontline Hero segment with a very special honoree. But first,
got a heat hit me upside the head, just like in '68. Yeah, brother man, we are back. The Bloods is back.
we take a look at Spike Lee's latest film, Five Bloods, and how it fits in his body of extremely influential work. Stay with us. We're coming right back. The movie theaters may be closed, but there are two big films opening this week. The Five Bloods finds director Spike Lee following a group of vets to Vietnam, while The King of Staten Island stars Pete Davidson in a new film by Judd Apatow. Eli Glasner joins us now. So Eli, let's start with Spike Lee. Last week we did my favorite Spike film, Do the Right Thing. Where does this one fit into his body of work?
Well, if you were wondering, has Spike mellowed in the 31 years since Do the Right Thing? The answer is no. No. This is Spike as spiky as ever. It is messy, long, emotional, musical, violent, everything and more. Begins with a real powerful montage blending a decade of American folly in Vietnam and then the years of pain and protest at home, the civil rights movement. And then the movie really begins Saigon, present day, and the reunion of the Bloods. And this is this group of 4 black Vietnam vets who survived the war coming back together, meeting at this hotel. Take a look.
It sure is good to see y'all. Is this some shit? I'm telling it's a stone cold trip being back here in country. Baby, we got off that plane, got a heat, hit me upside the head, kabop! Just like in '68. Yeah, brother man, we are back. The Bloods is back.
There you go. You got Melvin, Eddie, Otis, and Paul. They all have different reasons for returning to the country. And Lee, as the director, really kind of takes his time soaking in the atmosphere. We see them going out to a nightclub, dancing to a little Motown, really kind of adjusting to what Vietnam has become. But there's a second track to this film, the flashback, where we see them during the war fighting as soldiers on a mission to recover some CIA gold led by Stormin' Norman, Chadwick Boseman, the Black Panther himself, playing this almost mythical soldier that they all looked up to. And so this, Dwight, really is the crux of the film. Like, they're not tourists. This isn't some lighthearted bucket list sort of adventure. They are on a mission, and this is a treasure hunt. They're looking to get the body of their leader and repatriate him, but not only that, they want to find the gold, get those gold bars, bring them back home, and hopefully maybe that will kind of balance the scales for everything they suffered through.
Now, Eli, this film comes at a time where there's a lot of turmoil in America. Does The Five Bloods speak to the moment?
Certainly. I mean, there's the soldiers talking about how the black soldiers paid an uneven price. And then, the most interesting character of the bunch, the most disturbing but fascinating, is Paul, played by Delroy Lindo. Paul voted for President Trump. He announces this at the beginning of the film. His friends are shocked. You voted for President Bone Spurs? Yeah, you guys are all fake news. We got to build a wall, all of that. But Paul is also someone who is suffering. He's got a shadow on his soul. He's still haunted by the loss of his friend, Stormin' Norman. Take a look at this episode on a boat.
I see ghosts, y'all. I see ghosts. What happens to all of us, man?
So you seen them too?
Yeah.
Dad come to you at night. Stormin' Norm comes to me damn near every night. Now he talked to you like he talked to me. Yeah, come on. I don't think so.
So you really get the sense of that weight that he has. Now, I should warn you, this is a long film, and sometimes it feels like it's over 2.5 hours, kind of meanders until that point when they start to get close to the treasure, and then it transforms into something else, like a war film, a survival story, brothers in arms, falling to pieces. And the power of this film is that no one is pure. I mean, the Vietnamese, the Americans, there's scars on all sides. And I will warn you, Lee doesn't pull his punches. There's some grisly footage of the actual atrocities. And when the action gets going, it is rather, it gets messy. It gets bloody. But the biggest effect of all is Delroy Lindo as Paul. He is America's Frankenstein in a red MAGA cap. He's this monster created by the war, by racism, by decades of hurt and pain, neglected and left in the sun to curdle. There's this remarkable sequence with just him in the jungle, hacking his way through, looking at the camera, his eyes burning a hole through the lens, saying, "You made me malignant." So a little indulgent for sure, a little long, but it's those moments of pure cinema. That's what I come to Spike Lee for.
Wow, powerful. All right, let's talk about this one that is now on demand, The King of Staten Island. It comes from Judd Apatow. So how would you describe this film? Different than the last, I'm guessing.
I describe this as a return to form. It really is. I mean, this is kind of what you want from Apatow, the guy who gave us Knocked Up and all of that. And I think the secret is that he's teaming up with Pete Davidson. You know him from Saturday Night Live, and the setting, Staten Island, which gives it a bit of that kind of Jersey Shore energy. Now, Pete's playing Scott, this 24-year-old stoner who lives at home with his mother, played by Marissa Tomei. Scott says he's going to be a tattoo artist, but really, he just smokes up and gets high every day. Now, the thing is, Scott lost his father, who was a firefighter, when he was only 7, and he was never really the same. But then his mom starts dating someone new, and he's also a firefighter. That's where things get awkward. Take a look.
You ever think about putting on the jacket? Why would you even ask me that? What's wrong with being a fireman? It's fine if you don't have kids, because you don't know if you're going to come home or not, and then your kids are up.
You make everyone around you feel crazy. People are normal, then they hang out with you, and then they're fucking Jack Nicholson in The Shining or something.
I gotta tell my mom you tried to drown me.
It's an above-ground pool. You're like fucking 8 feet tall.
So, there you go. I mean, I'll tell you, this is a star-making performance. This is the kind of role that changes careers. You know Pete Davidson is the tall, funny guy from Saturday Night Live, but he shows us new depths in this film. He plays Scott as someone with this abrasive kind of honesty. It's a rom-com, but it's really about Scott learning to love himself. And I think what makes it unique is that Davidson's own life story. He lost his father, who was a firefighter, on 9/11 when he was only 7. So he has been working through that and really kind of exploring how that absence affected him. He's one of the co-writers on this script. And so anytime you have a comedy that's grounded in something real like that, that's what really kind of makes it special. So that is The King of Staten Island, and it's an on-demand title that you can watch tonight.
Thank you, Eli.
Thank you.
After the break, today's Frontline Heroes. Stick around for that. We'll be right back. Of the Philippines was raised today at City Hall. June is Filipino Heritage Month in our city, and today is Philippines Independence Day. Joining the mayor for the ceremony was the country's Consul General in Toronto. There are more than 200,000 Filipino Canadians who call our city home. And we're about to talk about one of them. For the past couple of months, CBC Toronto has been honoring the countless number of people who've helped in the fight against COVID-19. They come from all walks of life, and we call them our frontline heroes. Now, we're wrapping up our series this week, and we thought we'd give our final shout out to one Torontonian who's led the charge to keep our city safe, Dr. Eileen Davila, Toronto's Medical Officer of Health. Take a listen to what Mayor John Tory had to say about the doctor's leadership.
She is, to me, the original kind of iron fist in the velvet glove. And by that I mean she is a consummate professional, always informed. Will go away and have a look if she doesn't have the answer at hand, won't try and make it up. She is a pleasure to work with. She works well with the team. And maybe the most important thing about her to me from just my watching during this incredible emergency where she had to tell us some news that I never thought I'd hear in my whole life about possibly what could happen if we didn't act. She's the first one to rely on and to give credit to her team. That professionalism, that willingness to sit and listen and discuss. She is a frontline hero for me, and I'm sure for the people of the City of Toronto and for the people of Canada in dealing with this pandemic.
Our Toronto host, Merville Taruk, had a chance to speak with Dr. Davila about what it's like to lead the city through this never-before-seen threat and the personal toll it's taken.
You'll have heard me say many times over the course of the press briefings, this is a new virus. It is very difficult to say this is the best way to go or this is the clear path forward. And so we have to use pretty much every skill that we've ever learned in public health practice and in our professional careers, exercising good judgment, understanding what's important to our community. I think the other side of that is being very upfront about what we know and what we don't know, and being prepared to change course when we realize we've gone down a path. It's not turning out exactly the way we wanted it to. Even thinking about, when is the right time to shut down businesses and which businesses do you need to shut down in order to control virus spread or to contain the virus. There is no right or wrong answer in advance because we'd never dealt with this virus before. You can try to learn from others' experiences, and we should learn from others' experiences, but we can't expect that we can take a cookie cutter approach and get the same results.
In all of this, have you had a chance to process what the last few months have been like for you?
There have been moments, where you get a little bit of reprieve, a few moments to rest, and then you start to think and realize, how very significant this is. And it's heavy, but by the same token, as somebody who works in public health, you get excited about the opportunities that exist. To me, it's fascinating that it's taken a communicable disease, an infectious disease, to highlight all the challenges we have with the issues that do drive health. Income disparities, housing challenges, lack of connection. Frankly, no data that I've ever seen has highlighted those challenges in the way that this virus has. So we have to take the opportunity that's presented itself, because that's what we do as public health. I owe a great deal of thanks to my family. They have been nothing but supportive throughout this. If I'm being very honest and very candid about what it's taken, work-life balance is completely out of balance. There was a period of time during which I was not going home. I do take my responsibility to the 3 million residents of Toronto extremely seriously. My family is part of that. So while it does take away from our personal life, it is also serving them. It's about creating the city in which they live and making that city as healthy as possible.
I can't let you go without asking about the scarves. This has taken on a life of its own. Like, it's got its own Twitter handle.
Always have my scarf, always.
Serge Ibaka weighed in on the scarves.
I do appreciate the fact that there was, there was something to be, lighthearted about. And I'm glad that it offered that levity to all of us, because we all needed it.
Thank you, Dr. Davila. That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Mike Wise has your next local news tonight at 11 after the National. We'll see you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody, and stay safe.